All right, hello everybody. This is Camille's broker office hours for January 23rd. Just me and Robert here today so far.
You want me to shut it off?
And Robert, do you have any questions you want to bring up?
No, not yet.
Nothing today.
I
Okay.
might later.
Okay. I thought if nobody has any questions, I will talk about home inspections and the request for repairs. So let's start with home inspections. There's a number of home inspectors out there. I personally have still, in almost 5 years of working here in New Mexico, still have not really found a home inspector that I really like to use. People in the office have had good experience with Duke City. Southwest, I think, has quit doing them. And some people like to use them. I used them on a few deals and then didn't have such a good experience on one of my deals, so I stopped using them. The thing to look for in picking a home inspector is, one, the cost, of course, is really, an issue for your client, especially if they're a first-time home buyer and they're just struggling to even come up with the home inspection money. That might be an important consideration, but it shouldn't be the only consideration. So you want to pick somebody who I think has some construction background is helpful, and has even better if they have connections to the ancillary inspections that you need and can set those up for you too, such as sewer inspection, termite inspection, maybe any other specialized inspections. I usually recommend doing a home inspection, a sewer inspection, and a termite inspection on every deal. They don't have to do these extra ones unless it's a VA or an FHA loan. Then they do need to do a termite. That's a requirement. And then once you get your home inspection, there may be some things that come up on that home inspection that you should investigate further. And it's the client's call. And sometimes they're like, well, it's okay, I can deal with it. Or they're like, this is really scary. We might need a new air conditioner. And I want to know if that's really an issue. The problem about investigating heating and cooling systems is that when it's in the opposite season, it can sometimes be hard to get them inspected. When it's below a certain temperature, and I can't remember whether, I think it might be 55 degrees or something like that, the air conditioning can't even be inspected because it will seize and freeze if it's too cold outside and you try to run the compressor. So they won't even turn on, or if they don't have that safety feature, then they turn them on and then it's, it hurts the air conditioner. So sometimes you can't check something in the opposite season and you just kind of have to go with the visual inspection and hope it's going to be okay. And heating the same way, so if it's, I have a listing right now that has a swamp cooler and forced air, and there's something about the way the ductwork is set up. Natalie's going to join us. Something about the way the ductwork is set up in that house that you have to choose one or the other. You can't have them both running. Like, would be nice if you could run the heat at night and the swamp cooler during the day, because that's kind of how our weather is sometimes, right? But you can't in this house. And that was causing an issue because we were in escrow during the swing season between the two, and the tenant wasn't quite ready to turn off the swamp cooler so that we could check the heat system. And we had to wait a little bit until it was time to shut down the evaporative cooler for the season and start up the heating system for the season. And so it was causing some issues. So you might even come into a situation like that. But at any rate, home inspectors are not going to catch everything, and you need to warn your client that they're going to miss some things. They're only in the house for a couple of hours. They don't live there. And sometimes they don't know how to turn things on and properly check them. I've had numerous home inspections where the home inspector said, I guess it doesn't work. I can't turn it on. and they just didn't know how to do it. A switch or something was needed to be clicked and they didn't know. Because there's so many different kinds of systems out there that they can't possibly know them all, okay? So in choosing a home inspector, having a construction background is helpful, as I mentioned earlier, and that's part of the reason why they've run into more systems and they've installed these systems and they know how they're supposed to work. And so be careful about recommending home inspections. The guideline is to give them 3 choices. And the reason for that is that you want to make it clear that you have nothing to do with these home inspection companies. They're simply providing assistance to them to select their choice of home inspector. Okay, it's totally their call. A lot of the time, the home buyer is like, I don't know any home inspectors. You must know home inspectors. Why don't you pick one for me? And you can do that, but you make sure that your client knows you are not affiliated with them. And just because you had a good experience with them on another home inspection does not guarantee that this one's going to be a good home inspection. And they have the home inspectors have all kinds of disclaimers to kind of put that in writing, that they say, look, we do our best, but we're going to miss stuff. Boy, okay, there we go. Okay, I don't know if you guys got that. I looked like I froze for a minute, so I'm going to carry on
Yes,
here
I,
now.
I didn't hear that
Yeah.
last bit.
Okay, I can tell you that just about every home inspection I've ever been a part of or had done on my own properties, they missed stuff. And sometimes it's big stuff. And the client will call you 2 or 3 months after the closing and say, the home inspector missed the water heater, isn't right, blah, 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 blah. And at this point, you just say, have you reached out to the home inspection company? Because I really can't do anything to help you beyond that. This is on them. And I've had home inspectors have to buy a new water heater for a client because they didn't inspect it right. They missed it completely. Something really important. And so most home inspectors do have E&O insurance to cover those kind of things if they miss something important. And so direct your client to go reach out to the home inspector to get the problem addressed that way. We really don't have any resources or leverage to help them. And it's not our, we can help them get connected. We can help them point them in the right direction, but we can't fix it. And it's not our E&O that should be at stake here. So you always want to redirect them back to the home inspection company that they chose, hopefully. On Robert's deal that he's working on, the client took it upon themselves to go find their own home inspector. Great. But usually they don't know anybody and they look to you for advice and guidance on who to hire for a home inspection. All right, so home inspection, sewer, and termite are the 3 basic home inspections that should pretty much always be done. Even on a new construction, for not so much for termite, but for sewer. We had a 1-year-old house that when the line had been put in, there was a dip in it. And sewage was getting caught in that low spot. And we would have never known if we didn't do that that sewer scope. Okay, so that got caught, it got dug up, it got corrected, and everybody was happy. Okay, we wouldn't have known that. We'd assumed a new house shouldn't need a sewer scope, but it's always a good idea, especially on a really, really old home. Okay, or anything that's had years of occupancy. I had a deal that I did where it was maybe a 10-year-old home, I think. And the people that had lived in it had been the original owners bought it from the builder, and they were meticulous about taking care of that home, but they'd never had a sewer clean out. And so when we ordered the home inspection and the sewer scope came back, it was full of grease. And there were a few tree roots in there not really impairing the flow, but they were starting to get in. And there was an offset as well that was keeping things from flowing correctly. Wouldn't have known all that. And so even though the house had been meticulously cared for, there was some work needed on the sewer system, okay? And what else can I tell you about that? Any questions so far or thoughts about home inspections yet from what I've said?
Well, I
Matt?
think it's what you're suggesting probably is to reach out to two and three, get to know somebody that you can actually have a contact, not a referral, but these are people that I have looked up, and you're free to
Yeah,
take your choice and do what you want to do with that.
yeah,
But it would behoove us to know who we're talking about and
yeah.
who we're suggesting. Yeah.
Yes. And so when you have a home inspection to do, you need to participate, you need to go. And you go in, they usually have their own super key. So it's not because they need you to let them in the house. It's just you need to be there, especially if your buyer is going to be there. And the buyer should be there. Sometimes they can't. They live out of state and they're not going to be able to make it here for the home inspection. And in that case, you let the home inspector go do their job. And at the end of it, I always like to do a little video recording and ask them to give me a synopsis of what they found. And in their own words, they can go around and show you, and you can videotape for your buyer what the inspector found and send them a video tape of the inspector showing them the things they found that are important to note. They will be in the home inspection with pictures and a description and so forth, but it's better if the home buyer can see, and get a verbal explanation from the home inspector. So I like to do that when the home buyer cannot be there. It's okay for the seller to be there. And in fact, I encourage it because, like I said earlier, sometimes the home inspector doesn't know how to turn something on or will refuse to turn something on. If there's a valve or a pilot that needs to be lit, they will not do it. So if the house has been vacant and the water heater is turned off and it's not been turned back on, they won't do it. They won't turn it on. It's too much liability for them and they won't do it. Same thing with the furnace or a stove or anything that has a pilot light or some sort of gizmo that needs to use to turn it on, even with the evaporative cooler, turning on the water to run the evaporative cooler. If it's not on, they won't do it.
Wow.
They're worried that it's going to
Break.
cause a liability issue for them. So if the home seller is there, they can turn things on for them. And that way, the home inspection can continue and be completed. All right. Otherwise, the home inspector puts not inspected, and the buyer has no idea if the evaporative cooler is working right or the water heater is working right because they couldn't turn it on. So there are some people who say, I don't want the seller to be there. I don't want them to know what's going on. I say, let them know what's going on. That way, when you put your request for repairs through on the notice of objection, the seller is aware of what's going on and they can react appropriately because they understand, oh, the water heater had 17 things that needed correcting on it because it wasn't installed correctly by a professional. And they've heard that from the home inspector and they can see exactly what's wrong. So don't be afraid to let the seller be at the home inspection. They should stay out of the way. They shouldn't volunteer information. They shouldn't go around pointing out things the home inspector should check. They just keep their mouth shut until asked and sit quietly away from the activity. And at the end, if the home inspector needs help or has a question, they can answer questions. Okay. It's also a time for the buyer and seller to get to talk to each other and ask questions of the seller, about what they know about the house. So don't be afraid to let that happen either. That is perfectly fine. Okay. They might want to know, well, when did you get the roof replaced? Oh, yeah. And then you get to talk about it. And that's okay. Okay. Or plumbing repairs or, the neighborhood or whatever. Okay. It's perfectly okay for buyer and seller to talk to each other at the home inspection. Don't be afraid of that. Sometimes, things can get contentious. In that case, maybe you do want to keep them separate. But if everybody's getting along okay, it's perfectly fine. Okay, a home inspection report should have pictures, it should have a complete description, it should have at the beginning a summary that says, here are the things that need attention, and then they go through the rest of it and explain and cover every little bit of the house. So as you start to work with different inspectors, take note of how they do their reports. To me, that's really important. Is it clear? Is it concise? Is it complete? And does it have pictures? There are, everybody does it a little differently. And then they have different software setups and programs that they use to do their inspection reports. So to me, it's important to have a clear and concise and complete home inspection report that I can work with and understand. You should read the home inspection. When your buyers and you get the home inspection from that inspector, go ahead and read it all. And because your buyers probably have questions. What does all this mean? What do I, is this important? And don't let the home buyer turn the home inspection into a to-do list for the seller. Okay. I have seen some ridiculous, like pages long requests for repairs. That's to me a little bit ridiculous. If it's important to the health, safety, or welfare of the occupants, then it should be looked at and addressed. But I've seen people put the pettiest stuff in a home inspection request, or I should say notice of objection, like a tear in the screen, want that fixed. Get it done after close of escrow. Okay, don't bug the seller with petty stuff. A lock is jiggly. Tighten it up yourself after you own it. Little stuff like that should, to my mind, not be on a home inspection. I mean, on a request for repairs. I call it request for repairs because that's what we call it in California, and I still haven't gotten used to the new name, notice of objection. But try to keep petty stuff that's, handyman stuff off of your request for repairs, your notice of objection. Things that are important to the health, safety, and welfare, such as smoke detectors or carbon monoxide detectors, are okay to put on there, even though they're very easy to put in yourself. The buyer put them in themselves after closing. But, if there's some maintenance needed on the heating and air conditioning systems, it's okay to put those things in there. You couldn't have known about that before your offer was made. And that's the other criteria. Could it have been known or seen before the offer was made? If there's a crack in the floor and the buyer walked right over it, don't put that in the notice of objections. But if there's, windows that don't work, or a leak in the roof, or flashings that need attention, important things to the health, safety, and welfare of the occupants, and keeping the house dry and pests out, those are okay to ask. I always prefer for the seller to give a credit at closing rather than doing the work. Some things will have to be addressed because it's an FHA or a VA loan and the appraiser called it out. The appraisers I've seen calling out dry rot problems and wanting those things painted. I just had one where the entire separate detached garage had to get painted, and it was $6,000 for the seller to hire a painter to go do a garage. Another one where there was a little shed and the termite inspector didn't bother to inspect the shed. And the VA said, go back out there and inspect the shed. We want to know that that doesn't have any termites too. So, they can be kind of picky on FHA and VA. And that's part of the reason why some sellers don't want offers from FHA and VA, because they're like, I don't want to do those niggly repairs. Don't bother me. I want to get out of here. I got to move. So at any rate, you put on your notice of objection anything that's kind of important to get done. And that's a total subjective call. Have an idea of what this work would cost to get done. Because when the seller comes back and says, we'll give you $2,000 or $5,000, you want to be able to tell your buyer, yes, that's a reasonable offer. I would take it. Or, maybe you push back a little bit and try to get a bit more. The new request for repair form process, you get your notice of objection. And by the way, you get as many chances to submit those as you need to as You get your home inspection, termite inspection done, but the septic system can't be inspected for 2 more weeks because we can't find the permit, can't find the inspector, it's in boondocks and we can't find somebody to go out there, whatever the problem is, you can submit that as objection number 2. And then the well takes another week, same problems. That can be on a 3rd objection. And that's the way the forms are designed. The second part of the forms are designed to be able to negotiate back and forth. You know, response number 1 to objection number 1, response number 2 to objection number 1. Make sure you keep track of the numbering systems. I did a whole training when the new ORR forms came out, and I'm sure I could dig that up and make that available to you, but I believe Ashley Strauss Martin has also done some training on that. And you can probably get some training through GAR, but I'm always happy to answer questions for you about the ORR, objections, resolution, responses, and resolution forms, okay? But that's all part of this home inspection process. So do not give the seller's side all the home inspection unless they ask for it. They are entitled to receive a copy of it if they want it. But usually the other agent is going to shield them from that and say, only give us the 3 pages pertinent to your requests or whatever it might be. Make sure you do that. Don't give them the whole inspection. I just saw somebody's paperwork come through here today that he should know better. He's an experienced agent, put in the whole home inspection and didn't parse it out for the seller. Okay, there's this form, a website, and I'm going to put this in the chat for you, called ilovepdf.com. Okay, and that's where you can go to separate pages. You can redact information and cover it up if you don't want it to show on what you're going to send to the seller's side with your request for repairs. And you can piece together stuff and make it into one PDF and that sort of thing. There's lots of things you can do with that ilovepdf.com. It's free. And so that's a really cool tool to have. If you're using Amy, she can take care of this for you. And she's always happy to, put it all together for you. You have to write your request for repairs, your notice of objection. But once you get it written, then you give it to Amy to send out to the other side for you, along with the pages from the home inspection that are needed. Okay. So, she can help you with that, but you have to write it. When you write your request for repairs, I want you to write it like a contractor punch list, okay? And you say language like, not such and such needs to be done, but repair back door window screen, page 32 of home inspection. Okay, so you can say page 32. Beginning, you say all of these items are pertinent to home inspection dated such and such by so and so. And then you just say page 32, window screen. Replace and air filters in furnace, page 17, that sort of thing. Don't always, like I've seen some agents write it through, buyer requests such and such, and they, next line, buyer requests such and such. Just make it like here's what we need you to do. Buyer respectfully requests, Put them in a list. Like you're telling the contractor, these are your punch list items, okay? And then what else? Make sure you check your English and your spelling and your grammar and that it all makes sense. Triple check your work before you send it out to the other side. There is a box at the bottom of the notice of objection to add more information on Exhibit A or whatever it turns out to be. And so feel free to use that extra page to add more to it if it's an extra long request list. And at the end, I like to, I'll delineate all the things that are wrong. And then I'll say, in lieu of repairs, buyer will accept X $1,000 in closing cost credit or price reduction or both, something like that. Okay. So you can do it that way. And that way they kind of know, okay, phew, we don't have to fix all these things. We can just give them some money and they'll do it after closing. All right. It's always better to get the money at closing, taken off the closing costs so that the buyer actually has some funds to go get repairs made that they need to get done. Okay. All right. Any questions so far about all of that?
So you're saying that when you do have a request of repairs form, it should always go to the transaction coordinator first to send it out to the seller.
Yes, if you're using Amy. So
Yeah.
you write it up and fill
Okay.
it all out and then let Amy know, I've finished my notice of objection. Please send it out to everybody. So they get the buyer to sign it, send it over to the other agent. And she
Yeah,
will keep
'cause
track of what numbering system it needs to be too for you.
all right, so yeah, because that is going to be signed and accepted or rejected by the seller, and the correspondence goes back and forth.
Exactly. So let
Okay.
her keep track of that if she's on your deal. If she's not, you got to do it. Okay. You
Okay.
got to keep track of notice of objections, request responses. And then when everything is finalized, you put it in a resolution addendum. Now it's okay to use the closing cost credit addendum, the one that talks about just money or just time. It's okay to do that one, but that language is also built into the response form, the resolution form, I should say. Now be careful because the resolution form goes to the lender, and the less they know, the better. They don't really want to know all of the drama that went on in negotiating all this. So keep it simple, keep it short, and try to turn it into either a closing cost credit or price reduction with no explanation needed for the just if you're doing just a closing cost credit or a, a, a price reduction. You really don't need to get into any detail about what was agreed upon. Okay, just click the boxes that say $5,000 closing cost credit and you're done. Okay, I really don't like the way these new forms put a bunch of room for you to muck up your deal, because once you've informed the lender that the roof is leaking, then they need to see all this other documentation and they might kill your deal. Now, like, no, we want a new roof or we're not going to loan on this. And then the seller's like, I can't afford to put a new roof on this. I don't want to put a new roof on it. And then the deal falls apart. So be careful. If you have any questions about what to put on that resolution form, run it by me. Okay, I'm happy to take a look at it and see if I can simplify it to the bare minimum of what you need to say. I just approved somebody's paperwork today and he said, see, home inspection for all the things that were wrong. And you know, the only thing they were agreeing on was that the termite work needed to be done. It should have just simply said, do termite repairs according to estimate dated such and such date. That's it. And he went through and he outlined all the places that needed termite attention. No, don't need to do that. It's all on an invoice on it on the termite report. See termite report dated such and such. All repairs to be completed by same company. Okay, that's it. And if there's a closing cost credit, just keep it zipped. Okay. Anything else you have questions about regarding? Has anybody had a home inspection that was puzzling or had problems or they didn't know how to handle? Sergio, you've done a few deals. Do you have anything you can share about your experience with doing the notice of objection, the home inspection, any of that stuff? You can unmute. Here's, there we go.
Yes. Let's see, for home inspection. Yeah, I mean, you covered a lot of those things that you said are actually things that I've learned from doing home inspections. Exactly how you said it, right? Like keeping it as simple as possible. I learned that from experience, from sending the lender the objections whenever I first started. That's how I learned from experience. Not keeping it simple for them, and then also remembering the fact that it's just a simple, like, yeah, like how you explained it. Anything that's on the that you see, like during the time that you go see the house, um, basically object anything that you don't see because when you're off, you're submitting your offer based on everything you do see. So and I do the same also. I try to just do seller credits mostly. Um, and I advise my sellers the difference between the two, and everything. Like if the seller's gonna do it with a contractor, you're gonna do it with somebody that's as cheap as possible or something, or and you're not overseeing how they do the work. I don't know. There's just different advantages from whenever you get the money at closing and you can do it yourself.
Yeah.
Just try not to see it as like renegotiation. It's just as simple as fee. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it.
Cool. One of the reasons for having the buyer do it themselves is, one, they get control of who is going to do the work, and they get assurance that it's going to be warranted to them, and they get it done at their convenience and to their satisfaction. I had a deal, the same one that had the very pristine house that had a bad sewer line, and I let the seller insisted, I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it. I want to take care of it. So they did. However, after closing, the dirt started to kind of sink in where they had dug up the sewer lines. And that, the buyer reached out to me and they said, we're having problems here. And so I go back to the seller and we go back to the company that did the work, and the company that did the work said, we didn't do this for you, so we're not talking to you. Literally, they said, well, don't talk to us. We're not going to talk to you. You didn't order the work, so we're not talking to you. So then I had to get the seller involved to go back to the company that did this sewer repairs and have them get involved with getting them out there. The company didn't want to do anything about it. And so, finally we got them back out there to do some repairs. And the seller had spent $1,500 getting the lines cleaned and the roots out and treating it. And the buyers decided, nope, that wasn't good enough. They wanted new sewer lines. And these sewer lines were 12 feet under the street, the ones that were affected by this. I'm like, I want nothing to do with this. I am out of this because I think you're going to make things worse by digging up sewer lines. It's clean, it's flowing. That's good. That's enough. Stop there. No, they didn't want that. And I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm out of this because I think this is going to be a whole can of worms. And they were like, well, Camille didn't handle this correctly. And I'm like, as far as I could tell, it was handled, it was repair or replace. You didn't ask for replacement in the request for repairs. You said repair or replace, so the seller repaired it and everything's working. To me, that's good. We're good. No, Camille, you did this wrong. And I was like, oh shit, they're gonna come after the E&O. They said, we think you should help pay for this. I'm like, oh no, don't do this. Don't go digging up the street. It's not a good idea. And they just were insistent. I said, okay, here's $500 and I'm never having anything to do with this again. And you're never coming back to me again about any of this. And that's what we agreed on. I ended up paying $500 towards their redo of this job. And I so wish I had just had the buyers take care of this after close of escrow to their satisfaction. Give them $2,000 and they would have done it themselves and been able to handle it the way they wanted it handled. And so it got ugly and messy. And so I learned from that, if at all possible, let the buyers do it after closing with money they get back at the closing table for closing costs that they don't have to pay. They get money back in their pocket. Before the recession in 2008, sellers could throw money at buyers and buyers would walk away with $10,000 and $15,000 checks to go pay for new carpet, new windows, new this, new whatever. After the recession and after they revamped all the banking and mortgage laws, they wouldn't allow that anymore. So the only way buyers can get money to take care of stuff is closing cost credit, or the seller writes a check to the repair company, whatever it might be, whether it's septic, sewer, roof, air conditioner, whatever it is, a check either from the closing office, the escrow company, or from the seller directly to pay for it directly. It cannot go to the buyer. That's called loan fraud when that happens. So do not let that happen. All right, so it has to be done through the title company or by the seller directly to the vendor that's going to do the work. If the buyer knows I'm going to hire ABC Air Conditioning to fix the air conditioning, the seller can write a check to ABC Air Conditioning for the work and have it go to that directly. Okay. So what else? Anything else? You guys have questions about or issues?
Your topic today was about home inspections, and what else was?
And the notice of objection response and
Oh, yes.
resolution process.
Well, that's really good. What you covered here, being that this is my first transaction and dealing with somebody who's not going to be at the inspection, the seller.
Yeah.
It's really important to know what's to be shared to
Yeah.
the seller.
And he's never lived there, so he probably doesn't
Right.
know how some things work in the house.
Yeah, absolutely. He doesn't
Yeah.
know. And so I liked everything you've said about this, and then the forms that need to be used, and how it's got to be signed by both parties
Yeah.
to accept or reject. And I think that's very, very knowledgeable to be on top of all this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. So
When
I'm
these
looking forward. I
forms
have
came
a
out, everybody was like, because it was on one form that went back and forth, and now it's on separate forms that go together. And so everybody's kind of gotten used to that now, but this is your first deal. You didn't have the old system, but this is
right.
how we did it in California. There was a notice of objection. It was called the request for repairs. And then a response to that was a separate form. And then whatever happened to resolve it was done on an addendum. And that was what would go to the lender. So, now that we have kind of a confusing process because we have the resolution addendum that goes with the ORR process, form 5143, but we also have a separate form that's a standalone form that's just for negotiating requests for repair, any kind of price reduction or closing cost concession. So they're almost the same form, but there's more information on the resolution form. I just assume we not have the resolution form and use the existing form. But when there are repairs to be done, such as seller's going to replace the air conditioner unit, then just say simply HVAC unit to be replaced by such and such contractor prior to close of escrow or being paid for through close of escrow or however it's getting paid for. And then that's it. Don't get into a whole bunch of drama about what's wrong with the air conditioning and all that. It's just getting a new air conditioning system done.
Yeah, repair or replace. And we use a contractor form when we're doing work with our clients, and that would be we do complete house cleaning for the new buyer to come into the home once the sale has been done. And we also do yard and tree landscape beautification, yard beautification. So we'll clean up the yard and clean it up, and we put that on a contractor form and say this is what we're going to do, and it's signed by the seller, and we're good. And we know that we've done what we promised we would do. It's checked off.
That brings up another point. When it's 3 days or so before closing, you need to go out there with your client, if possible, if they're in the vicinity, can come to go and check on the work that was promised in the ORR process. So they said, we're going to fix these locks, we're going to replace the screen, we're going to put in some smoke detectors, we're going to put in a new oven, whatever it might be. Part of your walkthrough needs to be to check that they did everything that's on the list that they agreed to do. Okay.
They would expect to see that.
Yeah. If they didn't, there are places on the form, the walkthrough form, where you can state work not completed to be completed after close of escrow. We are still going to close on time. Okay. Or if it's really major, and really important, then you would say, hold everything. We're going to postpone closing until this work is completed. Such as, for example, the carpet didn't get replaced that was promised to be replaced. Well, you don't want to have people moving in if the carpet has, you have to move all the furniture to put the carpet in. That would be a deal breaker. Okay. Generally, though, if there's anything that was put on the request for repairs that was agreed by the seller to take care of, it can be handled after close of escrow. Carry on, close your deal with the understanding that there's still something outstanding to get repaired and the seller promises to take care of it. You lose your leverage once you close, but at least you have something documented in writing that the seller promised to do this. They didn't get it done on time, but they will do it next week after we close. For whatever reason, the contractors got sick, their equipment broke down, or whatever. They went out of business and had to find a new one. All kinds of crazy reasons things don't get completed on time. But doesn't necessarily have to hold up your escrow. You just need to take care of it on that walkthrough form. Make sure you do a walkthrough with your client before closing, okay?
Right.
So that you can verify that everything was done. The house is in essentially the same condition as when the offer was made, and any promised repairs are completed.
Okay.
Okay.
It's good.
And that the seller has moved out and left it clean, or the tenant or whoever was in the house that's supposed to move out, assuming there's somebody living in it. Okay, and like sometimes we've had deals where the person moved out and left a bunch of crap behind. That should get documented on the walkthrough form. Who's going to deal with that? What's it going to cost and who's going to pay for it? Hold money back at closing to take care of things like that. Okay, so if you have problems like that, you can reach out to me for guidance and I'll help you. That's what I'm here for. Okay, anything else you guys want to talk about or ask about?
I think we covered it. It's pretty good.
All right, good. All right. Well, I like to keep our meetings to 45 minutes. So unless we have a good reason to run on, and I think we've wrapped that up pretty good. If you have questions, let me know.
Great.
For you
Are
guys.
these trainings also taped
Yes, this
for
is,
review?
and
Okay.
I'm working on creating a platform for you to be able to come back and access them later if you need to,
Oh, great.
along with any paperwork or forms or spreadsheets that I promised. I'm behind now. I've got two. This is class number 3 or broker hours number 3. And I haven't got my platform up yet. So I'm still trying to get that going. But I want you to be able to come back to stuff and be able to download stuff that I promised to give you and stuff like that.
Awesome. Thank you,
That's
Camille.
good.
We'll
Okay.
see you then.
All right. Thanks for
Okay.
coming.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
You
Bye.
too.